All right. So we talked about basic operations R, that everything in R is an object, and then I don't know that I said this statement, but I want to now, that basically everything R does is a function or uses a function. So now that we're kind of past that point, we want to talk about getting help. Okay. So, for instance, if we needed to help, if we go back and we look at this mean function, or even for one of the exercises, so right here, why is it? Well, let's see. I think this might be one of the exercises right here. Yeah. Okay, this is an exercise for later, so I'm not gonna spoil this. But basically, you should check out the help file for the log function to help us understand why these numbers look a little weird. They're not, maybe not what we were expecting. So if we wanted to find out about a function, like for instance the mean function, we would type question mark mean. Now R is going to bring up a whole bunch of different kind of mean functions here. Really, we want the one that is just just says the mean. That's it. And when I press enter, it's going to bring up this help window over here. And the help window is going to include some information. Okay. So the all of these help files are structured basically the exact same way. So we can look at what I have in the notes versus what I have over here. They look very, very similar. Okay. So if I'm going to break out like an outline, what's going on here. So we have the name of the function. So that's right here. Here's the name. There's going to be, if there's an alias for the function, if it's known as, it's like an AKA, also known as this other function, that would be up there. And then inside of curly braces, it will have the source, i.e. the package that it came from. So right here, the mean function is in what's known as the base package for R. So this is like the most standard bit of R that you could ever get, okay? No matter if you have R, you have the base package. There are other times where you may not have access to other parts of R, but at minimum, everybody that is using R has access to the base package, and the mean function is in it. Okay, so this is the name of the function. This is the package that it comes from. And then here's a description, like that's right here. So we've got our description. Give me, this is a generic function for the arithmetic mean. Now the word generic here doesn't mean what it means in English. It's honestly a rather complicated term in R. The best way that I can use to describe it right now is that a generic function works for different kinds of data, and it's up to the people who write different parts of the R language to develop something called a method that matches this generic. That is way beyond what we need to cover in this course right now, but understand that this word generic doesn't mean like the standard English word for generic. So really, this arithmetic mean is just a function to get the arithmetic mean. That's what you need to see out of the description field. It will have some arguments. So that is, well, what are the things that need to go into the function? And that's this section right here. So an R object, like find X, and it should be that it says in the description, like right here, there are methods for numeric objects, there are methods for logical objects, and then also date, time, and time interval objects. And there's also, you could also do the mean for complex vectors. So that would be like 5 plus 2i or something, which we don't really deal with very much in public health sciences. But if for whatever reason you're working with an electrical engineer, and the electrical engineering, the imaginary numbers come up quite a bit. Imaginary complex numbers come up quite a bit in electrical engineering. So yeah, you could say, okay, well, we know how to also take the average of a vector of complex numbers as well. So here are the arguments. We've got X, trim, NARM, and then these fancy little dots that are saying, okay, if there's other arguments later on, the other things that happen inside the mean function that we need to be able to control, we could theoretically do it there. The details section of the help file, so that is farther down. There is no details section for a function like this for the mean function. Is there one for, I don't know if there's a details section for the round. So some functions will have a details section, and this is right here. This is usually where I look if the function is doing something I don't expect it to do. Like I was expecting the function to do one thing, but it did something else. I would want to go in and look at the details section. For simple functions, there's not usually a details section. Like if we're going to do rounding numbers or taking the mean of things, don't usually need a details section. The value section, this is where does it return? So right here, if the trim is equal to 0, which is the default, we're not dealing with a trimmed mean or whatever, it returns the arithmetic mean of the values in X. And yeah, and then it does some other things if necessary. And then finally, this is, to me, this is like one of the most important sections of a help file is the example section. This is where you can go and find some code and run it yourself. So if we wanted to find the mean of the numbers 0 to 10 and 50, so we create this vector. So remember the concatenate function, C for concatenate, says whatever goes here, just tack it on to whatever was here. This is the integer vector from 0 to 10. This is just the scalar 50. So we should end up with 0 to 10 and then a 50 on the end. And we do. We've got 0 to 10 and then the 50 just kind of smashed right next to it or concatenated next to it. And remember on the keyboard, I can press the up arrow to return the last command or the last expression. So that's that. And I want to take the mean of this. So if I say mean of these things, I get 8.75. This is the arithmetic mean of this vector of numbers. And so I've got I can run these examples and find out like, okay, I want to make sure I understand what's going on with this function. Okay, now, so, and this is super important right here. The example section is where I go first. And this is usually a lot of times if I can look at the examples, I can read if the examples are well written, I can read them and be like, oh, that's why I'm dumb. Because it's expecting, like their examples are for this function to do something totally different from what I was expecting, which is why the function doesn't do what I was expecting it to do because it wasn't designed to do what I was expecting it to do. Like the function, there's a relatively famous function called lag that is in R, and it has one operation out of one package, but then a totally different operation out of another package. There's another function called select. There's a version of this function out of the mass package, and then there's a version of this function out of the dplyr package. They do totally different things. And so a lot of times if you do question mark and then whatever the name of the function is, because you're like, okay, why is this function erroring? Or why is this function doing what I'm not expecting it to do? It could be like once you go down and look at the examples, you're like, oh, wait, this is not what I was expecting it to do. Also, you would look at the package and make sure it's the function out of the package that you want, that it's not like if you wanted the select function out of the mass package, make sure that the word dplyr is here or is not there or vice versa. So if you wanted the dplyr version of the select function, then make sure that whenever you do question mark select, it comes back saying dplyr, D-P-Y-L-R. Why can't I spell right now? Anyway, so yeah, I check examples first. And then if I'm looking at the examples, I'm like, okay, this makes sense. I really think I'm using this correctly. Then I'll go to the argument section. And maybe it is that I didn't understand one of the default values in one of these arguments. And it's actually that I needed to set this argument to be something else to get what I was expecting. And then finally, I'll look at like values and details after that. And then this is the value section says, well, what should the function return? And then if there is a details section, it would give some caveats, some helpful cautionary details saying, oh, you know what? If you're using this function on this particular type of data, just be aware that it could do this unexpected thing. And I get down to the details section, I'm like, oh, it's doing this unexpected thing and they have it in the documentation right there. And okay, shoot. So it's just something wrong with my data or whatever. I need to go back and figure it out. But again, these help files, they're all very, very structured. They all have almost the exact same fields. And once you get used to seeing one or two help files, then you'll get used to seeing all of the help files. One other thing this probably needs to be in like bright red, bold font or whatever, but use Google. I mean, I don't get paid to have every help file for every function memorized. That's not why I do what I do. I don't want to, I'm not a walking code dictionary. So I'm going to give an example. So Google is super helpful, and then Stack Overflow is also super helpful. Stack Overflow, sometimes you can get some people who are like, well, stop being an idiot. And they're not, they can be a little bit rude. A lot of times you'll get very helpful answers. Sometimes if you go to try to ask the question yourself, you can get in trouble because you didn't know how to ask the question. I am thinking about doing another, it's not currently in the lesson plan right now, but I'm thinking about adding another video of how to ask a good Stack Overflow question. Then again, I'm not the expert on this, and I'll go to Stack Overflow and I'll show you. Stack Overflow. So let's see if we can click on this first link. Yeah, so right here, I only have like 346 points in Stack Overflow. I am not a well-renowned Stack Overflow user. But you can search for, let's say that, for instance, going back to this other example, there was the select function that came out of the mass package, and then the select function that came out of the dplyr package. So maybe let's search about that. So I would type R, because Stack Overflow, we can have questions about Java. We can have questions about, we see right here, C++, questions about Visual Studio Code, questions about Docker, questions about all sorts of stuff, Python, Julia. So the first thing I would do is I would say, okay, let's start with R, okay? And then I think I want to learn about the select function and why is it giving me trouble. So I'm going to search for this. And let's see, I've got, there's 31, almost 32,000 results. And I probably want to search by the highest score here, because I just kind of like trying to learn about the select function. And then there's right here data.table versus dplyr. That's fine. And this is more data.table versus dplyr. Let's see. Okay, maybe this isn't helpful. Just kidding. Yeah, because this is some Python stuff, some SQL stuff. So maybe I don't search by score. Let's search by relevance. Okay. And these are all about the select function. Oh, here's something. The select function in R. Let's see if this is helpful. And I'm trying to upload an Excel file to R, and the function blah is working fine. When I add this, it brings up an error message. So let's find out. Oh, right here. And one of the comments is, well, hold on, make sure you're using the dplyr version of select. And go figure, what did I tell you earlier? There's a conflict. The function select exists in the package dplyr and in mass. So this is one of the things. This is a question that was asked 8 months ago, but it just keeps coming up over and over and over again, because a lot of times people aren't aware that you could have the same function that shows up in different, that has like sort of different, completely different operations based on what package it comes from. And so that's why it's always a really good thing to do question mark and then the name of the function, and then look at the package that it came from. So that's it. So this is Stack Overflow. And then if I went to Google, so I say R select function. And then this is going to talk about the select function from dplyr. This tells me how to select and rename variable. And then this is just a general help topic. What is the select function in R? And then it tells me it can be used to pick specific variables or features in a data frame. Let's see, he's got some examples in here and so forth. So this would be a good place for me to just kind of understand, like, this is what's going on. And now notice when I typed this, the first thing that came up was the select function is not working. And so I'll bet you this is not a notice, it's in bold. This is not a bug. This is not a bug. It is likely that you are either using a package beside dplyr that also has a select function, or you forgot to load the dplyr package. Okay. So again, this is pretty relatively famous question in R where you think that this function is supposed to be doing something, but in reality, it's doing something else. It's giving you an error or whatever. And you're like, I don't understand. I've typed it correctly and so forth. Just do question mark the function and make sure it's from the right package. Look at the examples, make sure that the examples are what you're expecting them to be. Look at the arguments, make sure that you're giving R what R is expecting to get, and so forth. All right, so that's all for this lesson, and we'll talk about scripts. I've been promising that we would talk about scripts for a while, so we'll be doing that next. See you all soon.